Oh? Ay! Anong sabi ni Jimmy? Ano? Ilan na sila? Okay. Wala ka bang number niya kung nakausap ko yung mga arkitekto? Huwag ayaw nila, wag sabihin mo. Ha? Akala ko ano ba kayo? Ladies and gentlemen, let us all rise for the arrival of the Honorable Senate President and the Senators of the Republic of the Philippines.
The 11th session of the Senate in the third regular session of the 17th Congress is hereby called to order. Senator Loren Legarda will lead the chamber in prayer.
Heavenly Father, we come before Thee to thank You for Your kindness and grace. Thank You for giving us this day to serve Your most holy name. Grant us, O Lord, that we may be able to make moral and sound decisions as we serve this beloved nation and people of Yours. Amidst all the challenges, we continue to put our faith and trust in You. Fill us with wisdom, courage, and compassion to fulfill our duties selflessly and to the best of our ability. Grant, O Lord, that the actions we take will always be for the common good and for Your greater glory. All this we beseech upon You in the name of our Savior Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. The Secretary will please call the roll.
Roll call of members, the Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Binay, De Lima, Drilon, Ejercito, Escudero, Gatchalian, Gordon, Onasan, Ontiveros, Lacson, Legarda, Pacquiao, Pangilinan, Pimentel, Poe, Recto, Trillanes, Villanueva, Villar, Zubiri, Senate President Soto III.
With 16 senators present, the chair declares the presence of a quorum. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I move that we dispense with the reading of the Journal of the 10th session, Tuesday, August 14, and consider the same as approved. I so move.
Any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, we have guests in the gallery today. We have the Assistant Solicitor Generals, solicitors, and administrative staff of the Office of the Solicitor General. I believe, yes, Mr. President, they're here with us today.
I see the Ambassador of Australia with us.
We also have the Ambassador of Australia with us today, Mr. President.
Thank you. We
I don't
welcome
have
you
the
to the
list.
Senate. Your
I
Excellency.
believe we also have with us, Mr.
Guests.
President, guest of Senator Joel Villanueva. These are the Tanawan Little Leaguers for being champions in the 2018 Senior League Softball World Series. They're here with us. The head of delegation is Mr. Fortunato Di Mayuga, and head coach Ramil Mercado, and all the players are here with us today, Your Honors. I believe Senator Joel will be sponsoring a resolution on their behalf.
We welcome them to the Senate. Thank you very much.
And as you mentioned earlier, Mr. President, we have with us Ambassador Amanda Gorley and staff of the Embassy of Australia and members of the Spark organization, Mr. President. Guests of
Welcome.
Senator Grace Poe.
Thank you. Welcome to the Senate.
And we also have a distinguished governor of Aklan, Governor Florencio Miraflores is with us also as well.
Welcome to the Senate, Governor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we proceed with the reference of business.
Any objection? There being none, the Secretary will proceed with the reference of business.
Reference of business. Messages from the House of Representatives. Letter from the House of Representatives informing the Senate that on 7 August 2018, it ratified the Conference Committee report on the disagreeing votes on House Number 6203 as amended by the Senate, entitled An Act Converting the Sorsogon State College in the Province of Sorsogon into a State University to be known as the Sorsogon State University and appropriating funds therefor.
To the archives.
Letter from the House of Representatives informing the Senate that on 8 August 2018, it ratified the Conference Committee report on the disagreeing votes on House Number 6031 entitled An Act Mandating the Integration of the Maasin City College into a Southern Leyte State University, SLSU.
To the archives.
Letter from the House of Representatives informing the Senate that on 8 August 2018, it designated Representatives Alvarez, Romualdo, Tugna, Tejada, Ferrer IV, and Garbin Jr. as conferees to the Bicameral Conference Committee on the disagreeing votes on House Number 5556 entitled An Act Extending for Another 25 Years the franchise granted to Isla Communications Company, Inc., presently known as Innove Communications, Inc., amending for the purpose Republic Act Number 7372, entitled An Act Granting the Isla Communications Company a franchise to install, operate, and maintain telecommunication services within the territory of the Republic of the Philippines in international points and for other purposes.
Referred to the Committee on Rules.
Letter from the House of Representatives informing the Senate that on 8 August 2018, it designated Representatives Tan, Erigel, Swansing, Salo, Bagao, Cayetano, and Chavez as conferees to the Bicameral Conference Committee on the disagreeing provisions of House Number 6617 entitled An Act Strengthening the Philippine Comprehensive Policy on Human Immunodeficiency Virus, HIV, and acquired immune deficiency syndrome, HIDS, prevention, treatment, care, and support, and establishing the Philippine National HIV and AIDS Plan and appropriating funds therefore, repealing for the purpose Republic Act Number 8504, otherwise known as the Philippine AIDS Prevention and Control Act of 1998. And Senate Number 1390 entitled An Act Strengthening the Philippine Comprehensive Policy on Human Immunodeficiency Virus HIV and Acquired Immunodeficiency Syndrome AIDS Prevention, Treatment, Care, and Support, and establishing the Philippine National AIDS Council, PNAC, repealing for the purpose Republic Act Number 8504, otherwise known as the Philippine AIDS Prevention and Control Act of 1998, and appropriating funds therefore.
Referred to the Committee on Rules.
Resolutions. PS Resolution Number 839 entitled Resolution Directing the Appropriate Senate Committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the Bureau of Immigration's failure to collect express lane fee charges from June to December 2017 with the end in view of crafting legislation to ensure accountability for gross misinterpretation of the law by public officials who are tasked to enforce them, introduced by Senator Laila M. De Lima.
Referred to the Committees on Accountability of Public Officers and Justice.
PS Resolution Number 840 entitled Resolution Urging the Appropriate Senate Committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the 4.75 billion net loss incurred by the Philippine Health Insurance Corporation PhilHealth, revealed in the 2017 Commission on Audit COA report, introduced by Senator Laila M. De Lima.
Referred to the Committees on Health, Government Corporations, and Public Enterprises.
PS Resolution Number 841 entitled Resolution Recognizing and Congratulating the Philippine Contingent for Dominating in the 14th International Mathematics Contest in Singapore, introduced by Senator Joel Villanueva.
To the Committee on Rules.
PS Resolution Number 842 entitled Resolution Recognizing and Congratulating the Tanawan Little League for being the champions in the 2018 Senior League Softball World Series, introduced by Senator Joel Villanueva.
To the Committee on Rules.
PS Resolution Number 843 entitled Resolution Directing the Appropriate Senate Committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation into the alleged shipment of 6.8 billion pesos worth of shabu smuggled into the country and the possible lack of coordination among the Bureau of Customs, the Philippine Drug Enforcement Agency, and the Philippine National Police, introduced by Senator Emmanuel Manny D. Pacquiao.
Referred to the Committee on Accountability of Public Officers and Investigations. The Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, with the permission of the body, I move that we consider proposed Senate Resolution Number 842. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, consideration of Senate Resolution 842 is in order.
Mr. President, may we ask the Secretary to read the title of the measure?
PS Resolution Number 842. Resolution recognizing and congratulating the Tanawan Little League for being the champions of the 2018 Senior League Softball World Series.
Mr. President, the measure is now in the period of sponsorship. I'd like to recognize the honorable gentleman from Bulacan, distinguished Senator Joel Villanueva, to sponsor the measure.
Senator Villanueva is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Majority Floor Leader. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Isang mapagpalang hapon sa atin lahat. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I am pleased to sponsor Senate Resolution Number 842, recognizing and congratulating Tanawan Little League for being the champion in the 2018 Senior League Softball World Series. Yes, Mr. President, World Series champion po ang ating mga kababayan. And let me say that Tanawan Little League's achievement is really significant because it is the very first title bagged by the country after 44 years of joining the league. It is also the first ever championship of any team in the tournament from the Asia-Pacific region. Mr. President, isang pambihirang pagkakataon po kung saan masasabi nating mga Pinoy, muli na namang naibalik ang mapa ng Pilipinas sa mundo. Sa kabila ng ilang araw ng pag-ulan na nagdulot ng matinding pagbaha, ganitong pagkakataon ang nagbibigay sa atin ng tibay at lakas bilang isang bansa. That shining, glorious moment happened after our Philippine team from our co-author, Senator Ralph Rectos home province of Batangas, defeated Southwest Texas District 9 Little League on August 6 at Bruce Layton Field in Lower Sussex, Delaware, with a shutout 7-0 win. Thanks, Mr. President, to Facebook Live for letting us witness that amazing pitch from Royevel Palma, Senator Frank Drilon's kababayan from Iloilo, who is now living in Batangas, that captivated our hearts and left us in awe. Imagine, Mr. President, how Royevel fired 15 strikeouts and allowed only 2 hits and 0 runs in all of the 7 innings during the championship game. Nakaka-proud po talaga, Mr. President. Nakakapangilabot din po dahil sa bawat pagbato ni Royevel ng bola, damang-dama po natin kung gaano kasarap maging isang Filipino. At sa kabila po ng magandang score, walang pinakitang kumpiyansa at tahimik na hinintay ng Tanawan Little League ang final score 7-0 bago sila nagsaya, naglulundag, nag-celebrate. Iyan po ang tatak ng Filipino sportsmanship. So congratulations, ladies, for bringing home the bacon and for giving our beloved country pride and honor. Iisa-isahin ko lang po sila, Mr. President. Royevel Palma, Kayla Sofia Ala, Dane Ashley Martinez, April Joyce Rosita, Jan Joyce Rasco, Jillian Pahotal, May Langa, Angel K. Bedaño, Marika Joanna Manaig, Princess Pamela Olfato, Nilin Pahotal, Christine G. Plaza, Tricia May Contreras, Kate Nueva, Cathy Nueva, and Diane Pasco. Mr. President, the entire team displayed to the world the strength and spirit of the Filipino people because of the remarkable support from their coaches. So let me also acknowledge our coaches, our head coach, Mr. Ramil Mercado, Coach Joselito Villanueva, Coach Geraldine Geroche, Coach Teddy Paul Landicho, and the head of delegation, Sir Fortunato Di Mayuga. Coaches, our recommendation also goes to each one of you. You were the wind beneath the wings of these world-class athletes. Mr. President, I learned that aside from being a barangay captain, head coach Ramil Mercado is also a former PUP softball player. Talaga pong kapag sa murang edad na-expose sa sports at nabigyan ng proper training, hindi lang po magiging magaling na atleta, kundi magaling na coach din. So let me take this opportunity also, Mr. President, to mention this representation filed Senate Bill 1615, or the Sports Varsity Teams in Basic Education Act, to develop a pool of Filipino athletes and champions, like Coach Ramil and these ladies of the Tanawan Little League, and also the Philippine women's softball team, who is currently ranked number 15 in the world and set out for the 2018 Asian Games in Jakarta next week. Masingit ko lang po, Ginoong Pangulo, ang aking lolo na si Joaquin Villanueva mula po sa mga saysayang lalawigan ng Bulacan, na ngayong araw po na ito ay nagdiriwang ng ika-440th founding anniversary na naging Olympic sprinter at nagbitbit po ng bandera ng Pilipinas sa Far Eastern Games. Sa 4 na magkakasunod na taon noong 1920s ay nagsimula din po bilang batang atleta na siya namang personal kong naging inspirasyon sa pagsusumite ng Senate Bill number 1615. Of course, kasama natin dito sa bulwagang ito ang ating pambansang kamao, Senator Manny Pacquiao, our national athlete, our Senate President himself, Senator Tito Soto. And so lastly, Mr. President, the achievement of the Tanawan Little League gives us an insight to once again focus on softball and encourage more children, more students to play this sport. After all, we had a long history of softball in the Philippines, which started during the American occupation. In fact, Filipinos were the ones who introduced softball to other Asian countries such as Japan and China. In 1915, the Philippines sent 2 girls teams in Far Eastern Games in Shanghai to demonstrate the game. Kaya po, Ginoong Pangulo, tunay na nasa DNA po talaga ng mga Pilipino ang galing sa softball, at muli, salamat sa Tanawan Little League sa pagpapaalala sa atin na magaling tayo sa sports na ito. May laban ang Pilipino dito. Muli, congratulations at salamat sa Tanawan Little League sa pagbibigay ng isa na namang tagumpay at inspirasyon sa lahing Pilipino. God bless us all at maraming salamat po, Ginoong Pangulo.
Majority Leader.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, speaking of the sidelines here, with Senator Ralph Recto, who would like to congratulate them. Not only will they be winning medals, but they'll also be receiving cash awards from the Senator of Batangas.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes. From
The
Tanawan,
Tanawan.
Batangas po yan, the pride of Southern Tagalog. But, Mr. President, may we also ask the sponsor if we could also be made co-sponsors of the said measure, co-authors?
Yes, please. It will be an honor, Mr. President.
With the permission of the body, all members present, Mr. President, to be made
We will
co-authors.
place that on record.
Mr. President, there being no interpellation or individual amendments, will there be amendments? None. Mr. President, we move to adopt proposed Senate Resolution number 842, subject to staff, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, PS Resolution 842 is approved.
May we have a 1-minute suspension, Mr. President, to congratulate the
Session
Winners.
is suspended. May we invite the other senators? Joel. Manny. Ayan. Senator ito, kailangan nandito.
Mga kababayan yan eh. Kaya magagaling eh. Meron ako ibibigay sa inyo ha. Para tulong sa team ninyo.
Yun, alright.
Para may cash prize kayo namin.
Ayan na, Ralph, picture. Picture. Ito, Tad, okay.
Sige lang, dito lang kami. Sasingit ako kayo.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Trip to Hong Kong ba?
Congratulations.
For the team, para sa team at least.
Hong Kong restaurant.
Oo, yun na. Maiksi ba yung agenda mo? Ano, alisan ko ng ano, alam ni Ram. Alam na ni Ram, alisan ko ng forum na. Okay, tuloy na muna. Mix, tuloy na muna tayo. Session. Session is resumed.
Manny, ready ka na sa'yo? Manny, ready ka na yung sa'yo? Boxing?
Majority Leader.
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move to resume consideration on Senate Bill number 1306. This is an act creating the Philippine Boxing Commission of Senator Manny Pacquiao.
Any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, we are in the period of amendments. We'd like to recognize the sponsor to deliver his amendments, Mr. President.
Senator Manny Pacquiao is recognized.
Sorry, Mr. President, may we ask for 1 minute suspension?
Session is suspended. Substitute, individual.
The delay. Okay, Mira Flores na. Gusto mo? Susunod na lang sa'yo. Mr. President, ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
While we are waiting the staff of Senator Manny Pacquiao, I'm sorry, Mr. President, I promised him a jump straight 1-2 quick combination, but I think we were too quick in calling out his measure. So may we suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 1306.
Any objection? There being none, consideration is hereby suspended.
Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration on House Bill number 7522. This is an act reapportioning the province of Aklan into 2 legislative districts. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, we are in the period of interpellation. We'd like to recognize the distinguished gentleman from Aurora, Senator Sonny Angara, to sponsor the measure.
Senator Sonny Angara is recognized to sponsor the measure in the period of interpellation.
We've already sponsored it. We sponsored it yesterday, Majority Leader, Mr. President, and no other member or no members of the Senate have signified an intention to interpellate. So if that is the case, with the permission of our colleagues, if we may move for the termination of the period of interpellation and debate.
Mr. President, we move to close the period of interpellation.
Any objection? There being none, the period of interpellations is hereby terminated.
Mr. President, we move to open the period of amendments.
There are just a few.
Any objection? There being none, Committee on Amendments, the period of amendments is hereby opened.
Just a few amendments, Mr. President, with indulgence of our colleagues. The first is on page 1, lines 1 to 10, to delete the entire section and to replace it with a new section to read as follows. Section 1, Legislative Districts. The province of Aklan is hereby reapportioned into 2 legislative districts to commence in the next national and local elections after the effectivity of this act period. Each district shall be composed of the following: A, 1st Legislative District, 1 Altavas, 2 Balete, 3 Banga, 4 Batan, 5 Calibo, 6 New Washington, 7 Libacao, 8 Madalag. B, 2nd Legislative District, 1 Buruanga, 2 Ibahay, 3 Lezo, 4 Makato, 5 Malay, 6 Malinaw, 7 Nabas, 8 Numancia, 9 Tangalan. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is approved.
Mr. President, on page 2, line 1, after section 2, to insert the phrase incumbent representative as the section title, be so move.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is approved.
On page 2, line 3, after the word new, to delete the small letter R and replace with a capital letter R. So move.
Any objection? Chair hears none. Motion is approved.
On page 2, line 4, after the word been, to insert the word duly. So move.
Any objection? Chair hears none. Amendment is adopted.
On page 2, line 5, after section 3, to insert the phrase implementing rules and regulations. I so move.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is approved.
On page 2, line 6, after the word act, to insert the phrase within 30 days upon the effectivity of this act. I so move.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is approved.
Mr. President, on page 2, line 7, after section 4, to insert the phrase repealing clause as the section title. So move.
Any objection? There being none, motion is adopted.
On page 2, line 9, after section 5, to insert the word effectivity as the section title. I so move.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is adopted.
No other amendments, Mr. President. I move that we close the period of amendments.
Any objection? There being none, committee, the period of amendments is hereby closed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Majority Leader.
President, with that, Mr. President, no other members wish to amend. We can proceed to approval on second reading. Mr. President, I move that we approve on second reading House Bill number 7522. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, House Bill 7522 is approved on second reading.
Mr. President, I move to suspend consideration of House Bill number 7522.
Consideration of the measure is hereby suspended.
And we'd like to congratulate also not only the sponsor but Governor Miraflores for his perseverance and persistence on the creation of 2 districts for his province, Mr. President. Mr. President, Senator Lacson, are you ready, sir? Second reading, saan ito? Pero na-refer na ba ito? Wala pa ito. This is sponsored already. Okay. Boss, okay lang, holiday lang, holiday. Then ikaw na po. Sunny, are you ready for Ifugao holiday? Ito ba? Yes, for 1 minute suspension, Mr. President.
Session is suspended.
Ikaw na lang. Mr. President, ready for resumption, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
Mr. President, I move to resume consideration of Senate Bill number 1898. I so move, Mr. President. This is under committee.
1898, any objection? There being none, consideration of Senate Bill 1898 is in order.
Mr. President, the status is we're in the period of interpellation. We'd like to recognize the distinguished sponsor from Cavite, no other than Honorable Senator Panfilo Lacson, Jr.
Senator Panfilo Lacson is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Nobody among the members signified to interpellate, so I move to close the period of interpellation.
What does the majority leader
Yes,
say?
Mr. President, we concur. We move to close the period of interpellation.
Any objection? There being none, the period of interpellations is hereby closed.
Mr. President, I move to open the period of amendments.
Any objection? There being none, period of amendments is hereby opened.
There are no amendments, Mr. President.
And there are no other members also signified to amend, Mr. President. Therefore, we close the period of amendments, Mr. President.
Any objection? Chair hears none. Period of amendments hereby terminated.
We just want to clarify, Mr. President, that yesterday we made motion after the speech of the honorable gentleman that the members present be made co-authors. Was it carried by the Secretariat?
Yes, it was noted.
Oh, noted. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Therefore, Mr. President, we move to approve on second reading Senate Bill number 1898. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, Senate Bill 1898 is hereby approved on second reading.
Congratulations is in order, Mr. President, to the chairman, Chairman Panfilo Lacson. As you mentioned yesterday, how can we say no to a police officer? Sa'yo, policeman.
Policeman.
Ako, police officer. Mr. President, we suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 1898. Congrats.
Any objection? There being none, the consideration of Senate Bill 1898 is suspended.
Bro, Sonny, you're good with this? Ifugao? Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration of House Bill number 5553 under Committee Report number 339. This is a measure of a special non-working holiday in the province of Ifugao. House Bill number 5553.
It is not, all right, any objection? With the permission of the chamber?
With the permission of the chamber, Your Honor.
Yes. House Bill 5553 is hereby considered.
Mr. President, the parliamentary status of the measures were in the period of interpellation, we'd like to recognize the sponsor, Senator Sani Angara, Mr. President.
Senator Sani Angara is recognized.
Mr. President, no member of the chamber has signified their intent to interpolate. It's a relatively simple bill to declare a local holiday in the province of Ifugao. I think they're trying to catch the September 2 so they can commemorate the important occasion already. So with that, I move that we move to close the period of interpellation and debate, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President, we move to close the period of interpellation.
Any objection? There being none, the period of interpellation is hereby closed.
Mr. President, I move to open the period of amendments and recognize the sponsor for any amendments.
There are no amendments, Mr. President, so if it's all right with the body, we move to close the period.
Mr. President, we move to close the period of amendments.
Yes, any objection? There being none, period of amendments is closed.
Mr. President, I move to approve on second reading House Bill number 5553 under Committee Report number 339. I so move.
Any objection? There being none, House Bill 5553 is approved on second reading.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move to suspend consideration of House Bill number 5553.
Any objection? There being none, House Bill 5553's consideration is hereby suspended.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Majority Leader.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. President, may we ask for just a 1-minute suspension?
Session suspended.
Mr. President, we're ready to resume.
Session is resumed.
Mr. President, we move to resume consideration on Senate Bill number 178 under Committee Report number 147.
Senate Bill 178. Any objection? There being none, consideration is hereby in order.
We're good with that. Senator Frank, okay. Payment system? Yung payment system, sir. Yeah. Mr. President, the status of the measures were in the period of interpellation. We'd like to move to recognize Senator Cheese Escudero, the sponsor of the measure.
Senator Francis Escudero is recognized to sponsor the measure, continuing sponsorship of the measure. Within the period of interpellation?
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. President, no member intimated to this representation their desire to interpolate on the measure. May we therefore ask the Majority Leader to close the period of interpellation and debate.
Well, my agenda, it says the minority leader is reserved to interpolate, so he's no longer interpolating.
He is no longer interpolating, Mr. President, after we address
After what?
his
Intimidating
concern
him?
in relation to the bill, which we will be addressing during the period of amendments.
I see. So, I see the minority leader nodding, but I would greatly appreciate.
For the record, we confirm the statement of Senator Escudero.
All right, thank you, the minority leader, Senator Dillon. So,
Mr. President, we can move to close the period of interpellation.
any objection? There being none, period of interpolation is hereby closed.
Mr. President, I move to open the period of amendments and recognize the sponsors.
Period of amendments now open. Senator Escudero is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have 10 short amendments. Number 1 on page 1, section 3, line 7, insert the word secured and a comma before the word efficient. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is adopted.
On the same page, section 4, line 14, insert the word payment between the words final and obligations. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is approved.
On page 5, section 10, line 21, change the word the to their, then add the word respective before the word regulation. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is approved.
On page 5, section 10, between lines 25 and 26, insert the following paragraph. Quote, the Bangko Sentral shall coordinate with the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, to facilitate the orderly discharge of payment obligations arising from security transactions in securities trading, clearing, and settlement systems under Republic Act number 8799 or the Securities Regulation Code, close quotations. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is adopted. By the sponsor, if the body will not mind, on line 26 of the same page, after that paragraph that you mentioned, the next paragraph says, the Bangko Sentral shall endeavor to coordinate, while your first paragraph says, shall coordinate.
President-
What is the reason for the inclusion of the word endeavor to?
We will address that in the following amendment.
I see. I'm sorry for jumping the gun,
It's okay, Mr.
Mr.
President.
Sponsor. I was just curious.
The next amendment, Mr. President, will address that. On page 5, section 10, line 26, delete the phrase endeavor to and replace it with the word likewise.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is adopted.
On page 5, section 10, line 26, delete the phrase regulators or. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Amendment is adopted.
On page 6, section 15, lines 22 to 23, delete the phrase disciplining of participants to its system and replace it with the word self-regulation. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is adopted.
On page 7, section 18, line 14, insert the word and END before the word users. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is approved.
An antecedent amendment, Mr. President, brought about by the proposal of our distinguished minority floor leader. On page 5, delete section 8 by deleting line 5 to 11 and renumber the sections accordingly. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is approved.
No further amendments, Mr. President.
There are no more amendments. The majority leader.
Mr. President, we move to close the period of amendments.
Any objection? There being none, period of amendments is hereby closed.
Mr. President, I move to approve on second reading Senate Bill number 178 under Committee Report number 147. So moved.
Any objection? There being none, Senate Bill 178 is hereby approved on second reading.
Mr. President, I move to suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 178.
Consideration of the bill is suspended.
Mr. President, I move to resume consideration on Senate Bill number 1455 under Committee Report number 138. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, amendments, motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move that we recognize the distinguished sponsor, Senator Francis Chis Escudero, to continue the period of interpellation. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, we are in the period of interpellation, and we recognize Senator Francis Escudero. 1455.
Mr. President, no member intimated this representation their desire to interpellate. May I therefore ask the Majority Leader to close the period of interpellation and debate. So
Yes,
moved,
Mr. President, I concur. We move to close the period of interpellation. So move, Mr.
Any objection? There being none, period of interpellation is hereby closed.
Mr. President, I move to open the period of amendments. I so move.
Any objection? There being none, period of amendment is hereby open.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have the honor to propose the following amendments. On page 2, line 44, section 5, change the word raters to rates. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is approved.
On page 2, line 47, section 6, delete the word in, quote unquote, between the words be and the. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is approved.
On page 3, line 49, section 9, delete the space between for and a so that fora is spelled correctly. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is approved.
On page 5, lines 5 to 12, section 5, reword the whole section to read as follows. Section 5, strict monitoring and implementation of this act. The monitoring and implementation of this act shall be strictly upheld. For this purpose, an interagency council is hereby created which shall consist of one representative each from the CHR, the CWC, the PCW, the KWF, and the FSL organizations or institutions. The Interagency Council shall make an annual report on the monitoring and implementation of this act, and a copy of which shall be submitted to both houses of Congress and published in accessible formats in their respective websites and through other means necessary to serve the purpose of effective dissemination. Failure to comply with any of the provisions of this act shall be a matter that can be referred to the Civil Service Commission, the DILG, Sandigan Bayan, or Office of the Ombudsman, or other pertinent offices or bodies for appropriate sanctions pursuant to existing laws and regulations. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Chair hears none. Amendment is approved.
No further amendments, Mr. President.
Majority Leader.
With no other members registered to amend as well, we move to close the period of amendments, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, period of amendments is hereby closed.
Mr. President, we move to approve on second reading Senate Bill number 1455. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, Senate Bill 1455 is approved on second reading.
Mr. President, we move to suspend consideration on Senate Bill number 1455.
With no objection, the consideration of 1455 is hereby suspended.
Mr. President, I believe if we are ready with the additional reference of business? Not yet? Okay.
Not yet.
Mr. President. Then we may continue, Mr. President. Mr. President, with the permission of the body, I move to resume consideration of Senate Bill number 756. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none,
This is an act
Senate Bill
declaring...
756 is hereby considered.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is an act declaring the 17th of November every year as National Student Leaders Day. We'd like to we are now in the period of interpellation. We'd like to recognize the honorable sponsor, Senator Francis Cheese Escudero.
Senator Francis Escudero is recognized.
Mr. President, no member registered to interpolate on this measure, but to clarify and to make it succinct, we do not seek to declare an additional holiday. We simply seek to commemorate that day as National Student Leaders Day, Mr. President. So hindi po ito dagdag na holiday.
Will you refresh our memory on why November 17 was chosen?
Kasi po, Mr. President, noong November 17, 1939, doon po nagsimula yung pakikibaka ng mga tao laban sa mga Nazi noong mga panahong yon, kung saan may pinatay na humigit kumulang 9 na estudyante at 5 propesor matapos nilang pasukan yung eskwelahan at inassassinate ho yung 14 na taong yon at pinakulong ang mahigit na 200 mga estudyante matapos nilang magprotesta laban sa panghihimasok at pananakop ng Nazi noong mga panahong yon. At mula noon, doon na po nakilala yung kagitingan ng mga estudyante at mag-aaral na lumaban sa isang mapanakop na kapangyarihan ng mga panahong yon.
Thank you for that, Mr. Sponsor. Majority Leader, there are no interpellators.
Mr. President, I move to close the period of interpellation, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, the period of interpellation is hereby closed.
Mr. President, I move to open the period of amendments. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, the period of amendment is hereby opened.
Amendments.
Wala.
There being no amendments, we move to close the period of amendments, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, period of amendments is hereby closed.
Mr. President, we move to approve on second reading Senate Bill number 756. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, Senate Bill 756 is hereby approved on second reading.
Mr. President, move to suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 756.
With no objection, consideration of the measure is hereby suspended.
Mr. President.
Session is suspended. Ayan, sige. Session is resumed.
Not 4 p.m. Mr. President, before we act on other matters, I'd just like to recognize the mayor of Tangub City and his lovely wife, Mayor Philip Tan and former Mayor Jenny Tan. Is with us.
We welcome Mayors Philip and Jenny
Jenny
Tan.
Tan of the beautiful Tangub City, the
Yes.
Christmas capital of Mindanao. Mr. President, if the additional reference of business
Yes,
is
it
ready,
is ready.
we move for
It
the
is
additional
ready.
reference of business.
The Secretary will read the additional reference of business.
Additional reference of business bills on first reading, Senate number 1931, entitled An Act Prescribing the Rules and Procedures for the Lease of Government Assets and for Other Purposes, introduced by Senator Maria Lourdes Nancy S. Binay.
Referred to the Committee on Public Works.
Senate number 1932, entitled An Act Ensuring the Fundamental Equality of Men and Women on Laws Relating to Crimes Against Chastity, amending for this purpose Article 333 and repealing Article 333 of Act 3815, otherwise known as the Revised Penal Code, and for other purposes, introduced by Senator Maria Lourdes Nancy S. Binay.
Referred to the Committee on Women, Children, Family Relations, and Gender Equality.
Senate number 1933, entitled An Act Converting the Marinduque State College in the Municipality of Boac, Province of Marinduque, into a state university to be known as the Marinduque State University and appropriating funds therefore, introduced by Senator Sani Angara.
Referred to the Committee on Education, Ways and Means, and Finance.
Senate number 1934, entitled An Act Reforming and Strengthening the Cooperative Development Authority, repealing for the purpose Republic Act number 6939, creating the Cooperative Development Authority and appropriating funds therefore, introduced by Senator Sani Angara.
Referred to the Committees on Cooperatives, Civil Service, and Finance.
Senate number 1935, entitled An Act Providing Special Protection of Children in Situations of Armed Conflict and Providing Penalties thereof, introduced by Senator Risa Ontiveros.
Referred to the Committees on Women, National Defense, and Finance.
Senate number 1936, entitled An Act Amending Republic Act 8972, otherwise known as the Act Providing for Benefits and Privileges to Solo Parents and Their Children, appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes, introduced by Senator Risa Ontiveros.
Referred to the Committees on Women, Social, Ways and Means, and Finance.
Senate number 1937, entitled An Act...
Social Justice likewise.
Senate number 1937, entitled An Act Increasing the Penalties for the Detention of Patients and Cadavers in Hospitals, Medical Clinics, or any other similar facilities on grounds of non-payment of hospital bills or medical expenses, amending for the purpose Republic Act 9439, entitled An Act Prohibiting the Detention of Patients in Hospitals and Medical Clinics on grounds of non-payment of hospital bills or medical expenses, introduced by Senator Risa Ontiveros.
referred to the Committees on Health, Social Justice, and Finance.
Senate Number 1938, entitled, An Act Institutionalizing the National Economic and Development Authority as the independent economic and planning agency of the Philippine government, defining its functions and amending Executive Order Number 230, Series of 1987 as amended, appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes, introduced by Senator Win Gatchalian.
Referred to the Committees on Economic Affairs, Civil Service, and Finance.
Senate Number 1939, entitled, An Act Ensuring the Continuous and Uninterrupted Transmission and Distribution of Electricity, the Protection of the Integrity and Reliability of Power Lines, and Providing Penalties for Violations thereof, introduced by Senator Win Gatchalian.
Referred to the Committee on Energy.
Resolutions. PS Resolution Number 844, entitled, Resolution Directing the Proper Senate Committees to Conduct an Inquiry in Aid of Legislation on the Unclaimed 1.3 billion peso cash grants under the Conditional Cash Transfer Program, introduced by Senator Marilourdes Nancy S. Binay.
Referred to the Committee on Social Justice.
PS Resolution Number 845, entitled, Resolution Strongly Urging the Metro Manila Council to recall MMDA Regulation Number 18005, establishing the expanded high occupancy vehicle lanes in EDSA, and calling for Metropolitan Manila Development Authority to immediately suspend the implementation thereof, introduced by Senator Soto III, Recto, Zubiri, and Drilon.
Referred to the Committee on Rules. Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, with the permission of the body, I move that we consider Senate Resolution Number 845. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, PS Resolution 845's consideration is in order.
Mr. President, may we ask the Secretary to read the title of the measure?
The Secretary will read the title of the measure.
PS Resolution Number 845, Resolution Strongly Urging the Metro Manila Council to recall MMDA Regulation Number 18-005, establishing the expanded high occupancy vehicle lanes in EDSA, and calling for the Metropolitan Manila Development Authority to immediately suspend the implementation thereof.
Mr. President, I move that we recognize one of the authors, Senator Franklin Drilon, a distinguished minority floor leader, to sponsor the measure.
The Minority Leader, Senator Franklin Drilon, is recognized to sponsor the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise today to sponsor the resolution authored by the President, the Senate President, the Senate President pro tempore, the Majority Leader, and this representation. This is the proposed Senate Resolution Number 845, which urges the Metro Manila Council to recall the regulation establishing the expanded high occupancy vehicle lanes in EDSA. Mr. President, last year in 2017, without any public hearing on consultation, MMDA Regulation Number 17-400, establishing the high occupancy vehicle lanes in EDSA, was designated, which designated lanes closest to Metro Rail Transit Number 3 for the exclusive use of motor vehicles with at least 2 occupants, otherwise known as the high occupancy vehicles. Take note, Mr. President, that initially it was only the HOV was only designated the lanes closest to Railroad Transit Number 3. In other words, the innermost lane. Recently, following unknown success of this of the dry run in the implementation of this MMDA Resolution 17-400, the Metro Manila Council, still without any public consultation or hearing, issued MMDA Regulation Number 18-005, which established the expanded high occupancy vehicle lanes in EDSA, designating all lanes in EDSA as HOV lanes. The regulation effectively imposed a driver-only ban in the whole 23.8 kilometer stretch of EDSA, from 7 a.m. until 10 a.m. and from 6 p.m. until 9 p.m. from Monday to Friday, and this deprived thousands of people of the use of the country's major thoroughfare. It is not proven empirical or otherwise, that indeed 70% of the motor vehicles plying EDSA is driver only driven, as asserted by the MMDA in justifying the issuance of MMDA Resolution 18-005. We have read in media, Mr. President, the protest of the experts and citizens alike, doubting the success of the high occupancy vehicles in easing the traffic congestion in the absence of safe and reliable alternative means of transportation and uncongested vehicular routes, I mean. Most importantly, Mr. President, this regulation would discriminate against those who cannot afford to hire a driver. That is the single biggest argument against this, and unduly favors those who have resources to hire drivers. Kung may kaya po kayo at mag-hire kayo ng driver, exempted po kayo dito dahil necessarily there will be an occupant of your vehicle other than your driver. Mr. President, transportation experts, including UP Planning and Development Research Foundation's Primitivo Cal, warned that such piecemeal or band-aid measure could even worsen traffic congestion, as it could encourage unauthorized for-hire vehicles or colorum, as shown by the recently scrapped Indonesian model. Moreover, Mr. President, it can result in the proliferation of for-hire riders. In some jurisdictions, Mr. President, where this is enforced, you will see boys standing in the corner before the HOV lanes. And for a small fee, these boys can act as your rider in the car to enable you to get into this restricted zone. So you will have a for-hire riders. This is one of those circumstances that they did not consider in imposing this rule. Moreover, Mr. President, a transportation research of a fellow from the Institute of Transportation Studies in the University of California, Berkeley, shows that
Mr. President, point of order. May I respectfully request for order in the House? The gentleman of the Minority Floor Leader is delivering a very important speech, and we're kind of disturbed by the din and noise in the House, Your Honor. Thank you.
The session on the right side of the hall is adjourned.
Thank you, Mr. President. With your permission, just a few more lines and we can move for the approval of this and ready to answer questions. In jurisdictions where these so-called HOV lanes have been implemented, particularly US, Canada, and Indonesia, this system has been criticized as ineffective and counterproductive in addressing traffic congestion. Indeed, Mr. President, in our jurisdiction, we wonder how this can be implemented, given the fact that many vehicles are tinted. So how would we know that there is a passenger? Second, kung huhulihin po lahat na mayroong walang nag-violate itong HOV, ay di magkaroon din po ng traffic sa EDSA dahil lahat po huhulihin. So in other words, what we're saying is that, this is a regulation which should have undergone a more extensive consultation and should have considered incentives for HOVs instead of imposing a total ban for drivers-only vehicles. The implementation of a regulation that would allegedly affect 70% of road users, tax-paying motorists plying the Philippines' major thoroughfares without holding a prior public consultation is violative of the due process of law enshrined and protected in our Constitution. In view of all this, Mr. President, may we move for the passage of proposed Senate Resolution 845, which will strongly urge the Metro Manila Council and the Metro Manila Development Authority to conduct public consultations, further study the driver-only ban, and provide real solutions to the Metro Manila traffic congestions. We also propose to strongly urge the Metro Manila Council to recall MMDA Regulation number 18-005, establishing the expanded high occupancy vehicle lanes at EDSA, and for MMDA to immediately suspend the implementation thereof. Mr. President, for these reasons, we move for the adoption of proposed Senate Resolution 845.
We wish to thank the distinguished principal sponsor of the measure for that very well-crafted sponsorship speech.
Mr. President.
Any other?
Yes, Senator Grace Poe. Mr.
Senator
President.
Grace Poe is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. As chairman of the Committee on Public Services, I would like to thank the minority leader for sponsoring this resolution. I mean, it comes from, this type of complaint does not just come from my committee, but everybody who's affected from this. And in fact, our Senate President himself, I know, drives himself to work every day, or most of the time. Other countries, as mentioned by the minority leader, have an HOV program. But usually, it's the leftmost lane, one lane only is designated for this, and they have other roads that you can choose from. It may be a little longer, but definitely it is not congested. Roads should be inclusive. I was just talking to my seatmate. How about parents who bring their children to school, especially single parents? What's going to happen when they come home? They have to stay in a particular area for another 3 hours just so they can finish the HOV specified time. The MMDA didn't make sure that the inner city and barangay roads, as well as the main thoroughfare, aside from EDSA, all around Metro Manila, can handle these affected motorists. They didn't have the courtesy even to call for a public hearing on this, or at least I did not hear about it. Then all of a sudden, even without much warning or public information, they come up with this regulation. We will just be replicating the horrors of EDSA in all other roads, Mr. President. Aalisin mo nga sa EDSA, ililipat mo naman sa ibang mga kalsada na hindi pa naman handa. Ang sinasabi ko, bago sila magkaroon ng mga regulasyon na ganito, dagdagan muna nila ang kalsada. Tapusin nila yung NLEX, SLEX Connector Road at kung ano-ano pa. Then maybe by the time we can start talking HOV, or the very least, they should at least try one lane. Yung pagbaban ng provincial buses, Mr. President, ang tagal na nilang plano, hindi pa nila nagagawa agad. Unahin muna nila yon. Baka naman makagaan na ng konti yun, hindi na kailangan yung HOV. So again, thank you to the minority leader, and we're hoping to have hearings on this, Mr. President. Thank you.
Mr. President. Senator Gordon, Mr. President.
Senator Richard Gordon is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I join the Senate Minority Floor Leader in his resolution. I think it is oppressive, unimaginative, and is simply a knee-jerk reaction, absent reflection on what to do in EDSA, Mr. President. For the reasons that were stated already by our colleagues, we could also make a suggestion that perhaps what they ought to do is a lane reserved for passengers and a lane so that they can have carpooling, Mr. President. But again, that would take also consultation so that we could do it. Perhaps some other solutions, like eventually we ban, the EDSA was designed, I believe, to be an 80-kilometer-per-hour highway, or thereabouts. But now it's about 10 to 15 kilometers per hour. 8 kilometers per hour, Mr. President. So it seems that we have the greatest knack, and we call it progress, of building, for example, buildings such as malls along EDSA. I think it's about time that we set a very strong signal and have a shot across the bow of some of these behemoth industries that have malls along very, very busy highways that were built out of taxpayers' money precisely to improve business in this country. Can you imagine how much we are spending on delays? How much stress is being given, is being inflicted upon our people, Mr. President? So I think that we should really take a look at this whole thing and conduct a study. And the study should also include other pressures in our communities, Mr. President. I saw a study recently, the Manila Bay study on environment, and it shows that Manila's population is doubling every 20 years. And we're not doing anything about it. In fact, along Central Luzon, the coastline is going down because of simply all the water pumps being inflicted upon groundwater, so the ground itself is going down. And therefore, we're losing agricultural land as well as creating more floods. I think there should be more study on this, and I think there should really be, it's about time that we really consider not just the traffic, but really an urban redevelopment scheme for Manila, and I'm preparing one, Mr. President, that includes really expanding and moving on decongesting, a dream that has been discussed by many, many other leaders in the past, of decongesting Manila and sending them to Central Luzon, or sending to some of the factories to Southern Luzon, at the same time requiring factories to put up housing as they do so. Because I think what is important to remember here is this. With all the traffic that is being inflicted upon our people, every day, and I come home late every day, Mr. President, I see long lines of people still under traffic, waiting for fares or waiting for the buses to come in. I mean, I think we have become hard-hearted about this. And I think we should really address the plight of our people who have to wait. Many of our people wake up early in the morning at 4 o'clock, 3 o'clock, to come to Manila from Bulacan, and then leave home and arrive home at about 12 o'clock midnight already, or 1 o'clock midnight, only to wake up early. It has become a drudgery, Mr. President. It has become a punishment to work in Metro Manila. So it is now time, I believe, that we take a look at some of these ideas on urban redevelopment. Other countries have done that. Even our flooding situation is awful. Netherlands is a country that is below sea level, and yet they don't have floods because they would rather invest money on infrastructure that would prevent floods rather than spend money rescuing people during floods or rehabilitating areas infected by floods. So, Mr. President, this is a country no longer running to stay in place. Even as we try to run forward, if you want to call it progress, and I don't call it progress, the vicissitudes imposed upon us by unchanneled and unplanned development makes us run, even if we're trying to move backward, run backward by perforce. And so, Mr. President, I like to associate myself with the observations and the resolution made by my good friend, Senator Dillon of Iloilo and Minority Floor Leader, so that perhaps this should be a head-turner, a game changer for us, and hopefully kakatok sa ating mga puso yung plight ng ating mga tao. Imagine, tatanggalin yung isang tao, tama yung sinabi rin ni Senator Pro, paano nga naman yung single parent na maghahatid? Katulad ni Sherwin Gatchalian, single parent, nagpapanggap na single parent, Mr. President.
Ihatid yung girlfriend.
Ha?
Ihatid yung girlfriend niya.
Hindi nga, kaya sinasabi ko na, Mr. President, para naman maawa tayo sa mga katulad ni Sherwin at Senator Gatchalian. And on that note, Mr. President, thank you very much. And Loren is also a single parent. So, I've never seen so many people enthusiastically pointing fingers at single parents here today. So thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I also agree, as one of the co-authors, that this measure is actually is more of deterrent to progress, because in other countries they put incentives on carpooling. here, rather than putting incentives on carpooling, they're actually banning single drivers or single persons in vehicles. I agree with Senator Grace po. Mahirap po paghatid ng iyong mga anak sa eskwelahan, magsa-standby pa lahat ng parents at co-parents sa isang lugar, baka magkaroon pa ng boyfriend at girlfriend doon. Kaya hindi tama yun. Just joking, Mr. President. So, Mr. President, no other member would like to interpolate, would they? But I was told on the sidelines, Mr. President, that the members present would like to be made co-authors as well. So we'd like to move for that, Mr. President. It's a bipartisan support of the measure.
Yes, of course, the minority leader being the principal sponsor of the
Yes.
measure. So
Mr.
we
President.
make on record that all members present be made co-sponsors and co-authors of the measure.
Mr.
Senator
President-
Legarda is recognized.
Senator Legarda would like to be recognized. We are all co-authors. Okay, Mr. President, I believe she will no longer
Okay, so with that,
interpolate. We move to close the period of interpolation, Mr. President, on this measure.
any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
There are no amendments proposed, Mr. President. I move that we close the period of amendments.
Any objection? Motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move that we approve Senate Resolution number 845. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection?
And we
There being
adopt.
none, PS Resolution 845 is hereby adopted. The Secretariat is directed to send a copy to the Metro Manila Development Authority.
Thank you, Mr. President. Congratulations to all the members of the Senate
Thank
for
you.
this particular stand on the issue on the carpooling in single driver lanes of EDSA.
Session is suspended.
Okay, so who's next? Hi, Ralph, I think you have to take over. Hindi, he has to lead. He has to lead. Also, who's ahead? Baliktad ang mundo. Hey, partner mo. FOY. FOY, will you accept FOY, sir? Cheese na muna and then cake. One more na lang kay cheese, one holiday. Yeah, tapos na. That's the only activity we have left. Mr. President, ready to resume?
Session is resumed.
Just some housekeeping measures, Mr. President. With the permission of the body, we move to elect Senator Pimentel. Senator Pimentel's membership to the following Senate committees that I used to occupy, Mr. President, oversight committees as well. With the permission of the body, we move to elect Senator Pimentel at the Environment and Natural Resources Committee
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
to replace me, Mr. President, and the Finance Committee to replace me as well, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
The Committee on Foreign Relations, Mr. President, sans my...
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
The Committee on Government and Government Corporations and Public Enterprises, Mr.
Is
President.
there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
And the National Defense and Security, Mr.
Is
President.
there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
The Public Services Committee, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
The Public Works Committee, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
The Committee on Science and Technology, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
The Committee on Social Justice, Welfare, and Rural Development, Mr.
Is
President.
there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
The Committee on Sports, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
The Committee on Ways and Means, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
The Committee on Economic Affairs, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
And three oversight committees, the Official Development Assistance, or ODA law, Mr. President, and Clean Air Act, as well as Climate Change.
Is there
oversight.
any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
And Senator Nancy Binay had approached me yesterday to ask also my membership for the Committee on Agriculture and Food. So I moved to elect Senator Binay as my replacement in the Committee on Agriculture and Food.
Is
So
there
moved.
any objection? There being none, motion is approved. Minority Leader. The Majority Leader will confirm that all of these nominations to the respective committees was brought about by the fact that the Majority Leader was then a member of these committees.
That's correct.
And these posts were vacated because the majority, Senator Subiri, has now become an ex officio member.
That is
so that there was a vacancy created, and that is why there were nominations from the majority group. Is that correct, Mr. President?
That is absolutely correct, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
President.
you.
Mr. President, with the permission of the body as well, we move to proceed with the Senate President's designation on the conferees on the part of the Senate to the Bicameral Conference Committee on the disagreeing votes on House Bill number 556. This is disagreeing provisions, I'm sorry. Disagreeing provisions on votes, no? Galing House, votes, okay. On House Bill number 5556. This is Isla Communications Company franchise. Mr. President, may you read the designees?
Yes, the following members are hereby designated as conferees on the part of the Senate to the Bicameral Conference Committee on the disagreeing votes on House Bill number 5556, entitled. They are Senator Poz, Chairperson, Senator Recto, Senator Escudero, Senator Villanueva, Senator Aquino on the part of the minority.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move to resume consideration on Senate Bill number 747. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
This is an act declaring July 25 of every year as the National Campus Freedom Day. We are in the period of interpellation. We'd like to recognize the Honorable Senator Francis Chis Escudero. So move.
Senator Escudero is recognized to sponsor the measure.
Mr. President, no member registered to interpolate, neither do we have any amendments to this bill. May I therefore move or ask the Majority Leader to move that the period of interpolation and amendments be closed.
Mr. President, I move to close the period of interpellation.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move to open the period of amendments.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
May BICAM reports tayo? Senator Escudero, no amendments?
No amendments,
Mr. President, there being no amendments, we move to close the period of amendments. I so move.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move to approve on second reading Senate Bill number 747. I so move.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move to suspend consideration Senate Bill number 747.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, one last measure of the distinguished gentleman from Sorsogon is I move to consider House Bill number 5577. I so move.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, this is an act mandating the conservation of the Gabaldon schools. It's in the period of interpellation. I move to recognize the sponsor, Senator Francis Chis Escudero.
Senator Escudero is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, no member registered to interpolate on the measure. May I therefore ask that we close the period of interpolation. We, however, have amendments, Mr. President.
Mr. President, I move to close the period of
Is
interpellation.
there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move to open the period of amendments and recognize the distinguished sponsor.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, may we propose the following amendments. Number 1, on page 2 between lines 10 and 11 rather, insert a new section, section 4, to read as follows. Gabaldon school buildings as cultural properties. All Gabaldon school buildings shall be recognized as built heritage and therefore be included as part of cultural properties under Republic Act number 166 or the National Cultural Heritage Act of 2009. However, notwithstanding the provisions of this act, as well as the provisions of Republic Act number 166, No public school teacher shall be held liable for acts committed to cause or effect emergency repairs on such structures. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Number 2, to renumber the sections accordingly, Mr. President. So move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
On page 3, lines 13 to 29, delete the entire section 5 and renumber the succeeding sections accordingly. So move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
No further amendments, Mr. President.
Majority Leader.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, with that, we move to approve on second reading House Bill number 5577.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move to suspend consideration House Bill number 5577.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Yes, Mr. President. I move that we resume consideration. Congrats, sir. I move that we resume consideration of Senate Bill number 1306. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, this is an act creating the Philippine Boxing Commission, which I called early during the day. I believe the sponsor is ready. The status is, we are in the period of amendments, Mr. President. May we recognize the sponsor, Senator Manny Pacquiao, to give his amendments. I so move.
Senator Pacquiao is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's been a long time. Thank you. I would like to introduce the following amendments to the SBN 1306 under Committee Report number 31, an act creating the Philippine Boxing Commission and combat sports, strengthening the boxing industry and combat sport, promote the safety and welfare of Filipino boxers and providing funds therefore. On page 1, section 1, line 2, insert the words in combat sports between the words boxing and commission. As an omnibus amendment, the Boxing Commission shall now read as a Boxing and Combat Sports Commission. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
On page 1, number 2, on page 1, section 2, lines 3 to 8, the whole paragraph is amended to read as follows. Section 2, declaration of policy. It is the policy of the state to promote sports, to foster patriotism and nationalism, accelerate social progress, and promote human liberation and development. The state shall promote excellence in the sport of boxing in combat by establishing a national agency to set the policy direction for the development and safety of Filipino professional boxers and combatants. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Number 3, on the same page 1, between lines 12 to 13, add the definition of boxer registry as letter C to read as follows, then renumber accordingly. C boxer and combatant registry shall refer to any entity certified by the Philippine Boxing and Combat Sports Commission for the purpose of maintaining records and identification of boxers and combatants. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Number 4, still on the same page 1, between lines 12 and 13, add new definition of combat sport as letter D to read as follows. D, combat sports means any of the following or combination of any of the following or a combination of any of following 1, boxing or fist fighting in any of its styles. 2nd, kickboxing in any of its styles. 3rd, any sport, martial art, or activity in which it's contestant in that sport
art or activity is required to strike, kick, hit, grapple with, throw or punch one or more other contestants, and that is prescribed by the regulations. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Still on the same page 1 between lines 12 and 13, add new definition on combatant as letter E to read as follows. E-combatant means person who engages in combat sport as a contestant and professional combat sport contest. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
On the same page 1, lines 14 and 15, delete the phrase be a professional boxer to perform duties as a coach or trainer of a professional boxer, a promoter for and in lieu thereof insert the phrase perform duties as a privilege connected with. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
On the same page 1, line 16, delete remaining phrase match or a judge or referee in said match. The definition of license will now read as if license shall refer to a document issued by the Commission authorizing a person or entity to perform duties as a privilege connected with professional boxing and combat sports. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Number 7, on page 2, line 9, after the word match, delete the phrase held in the Philippines.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
On the same page 2, line 22, after the word match, delete end phrase with a period.
Is
So
there,
move, Mr. President.
is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
On the same page 2, lines 25, 26, Section 4 is hereby amended to read as follows. Section 4, creation of the Philippine Boxing and Combat Sports Commission to carry out the above declared policy. The Philippine Boxing and Combat Sports Commission, hereinafter referred to as the Commission, is hereby created. The Commission shall be attached to the office of the President and have the same status as National Regulatory Agency. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
On the same page, number 10, on the same page 2, lines 30 to 33, and on page 3, lines 1 to 3, Section 5 is hereby amended to read as follows. Section 5, objectives. The Commission shall have the following objectives. To strengthen the boxing and combat sports industry in the Philippines and promote the development of world-class professional boxers and combatants. B, and to establish policies related to boxing and combat sports, to regulate professional boxing and combat sports, and to protect the welfare of professional boxers and combatants. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
11, on page 3, line 7, delete the phrase games and amusement board, and in lieu thereof, replace the phrase Philippine Sports Commission. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
On the same page 3, line 10, replace the acronym GAB with the acronym PEC. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
On the same page, number 12, on the same page 3, lines 29 to 33, Section 9 is hereby amended to read as follows. Section 9, allowances and per diems. The chairman and members of the commission shall each receive a monthly allowance to be determined by the commission. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Number 13, on page 4, Section 10 is hereby amended to add the following to read as follows. Section 10, powers and duties of the Commission. The Commission shall have the following powers and duties: to formulate, initiate, plan, and implement a national policy for the development of the sport of boxing and combat sports in the country. to establish a consultative mechanism which shall provide a forum for continuing dialogues between all stakeholders in the implementation of all laws, policies, programs, and projects relating to boxing and combat sports, to seek or request the assistance and support of any government agency, office, or instrumentality, including government-owned and controlled corporations, local government units, as well as non-governmental organizations or institutions in pursuit of its policies. Letter F, to establish and maintain linkages with international boxing organizations or institutions and counterpart agencies of foreign governments in order to facilitate and ensure the participation of Filipino professional boxers and combatants in international events. G, to determine and set a safety standard for and to ensure the emergency medical personnel and services are available in every professional boxing match in the Philippines. Professional boxing match and combatants in the Philippines. It's to establish a system of registration and licensing of boxers, combatants, referees, trainers, seconds, catman, and other personnel necessary for the boxing and combat sports. I, to maintain an integrated registry of professional boxers, combatants, coaches, trainers, judges, referees, and promoters who will comprise the registered stakeholders of the industry. J, to act as a quasi-judicial board when it shall deem necessary to initiate, undertake, hear, and decide any investigation for any violation of its rules and regulations concerning professional boxing and combat sports, and in connection therewith shall have the power to issue subpoena and subpoena ducis tecum. K, to allocate resources for the implementation of national policies related to boxers and combatants. L, to submit an annual report on the implementation of this act to the President and to the Congress. M, to perform such other functions as may be necessary to effectively and efficiently carry out the provisions of this act. The functions of the Games and Amusement Board, as well as the other entities related to boxing and combat sports, are hereby transferred to the Commission. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Number 14, on page 5, line 8 to 15, section 11 is hereby amended to read as follows. Section 11, Secretariat. The Commission shall establish a Secretariat which shall be headed by an Executive Director appointed by the Commission, in such other technical and administrative staff as may be needed and as determined by the Commission. The Secretariat shall implement the policies and programs approved by the Commission and administer its day-to-day functions. Their salaries, allowances, and other emoluments shall be determined by the Commission in accordance with civil service rules and other relevant and existing laws. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Number 15, on the same page 5, between lines 15 and 16, after section 11, insert new sections with respective subtitles to be numbered as follows. Section 12, physical and medical examination requirements. No person may arrange, promote, organize, produce, or fight in professional boxing and combat sports match without physical and diagnostic examination of each participating professional boxer and combatant professional boxer by an accredited and licensed physician of the Philippine Boxing and Combat Sports Commission, certifying whether or not the boxer or combatant is physically fit to safely compete pursuant to the rules and regulations of the Commission. I so move. Section 13, emergency medical services. A professional boxing and combat sports match may be held only if a licensed practicing physician whose services are paid by the promoter and duly registered with the commission is continuously present at the ringside of the professional boxing and combat sports match. B. Ambulances services, including oxygen tanks and other medical personnel equipped with appropriate resuscitation equipment continuously present on the ringside. C. A tertiary hospital is near the vicinity of the event, provided that a memorandum of agreement shall be executed between the promoter of the professional boxing and combat sports match and said hospital to ensure the injured boxers and combatants shall be attended to and their facilities with dispatch. Absence of the aforementioned requirement shall be a cause for the cancellation of the permit to hold the scheduled professional boxing and combat sports match. Section 16, social and health care benefits. All professional boxers and combatants shall be enrolled in the Social Security System or SSS National Health Insurance Program, PhilHealth, and the Home Development Mutual Fund or Pag-ibig, and shall be entitled to all the benefits in accordance with the pertinent provisions and provided by law. Premium payments or contributions shall be shouldered by the professional boxers and combatants promoter. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
16 on the page, on the same page, page 5, lines 20 to 32, the whole paragraph of section 13 is hereby deleted. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
17 on page 6, line 1, section 14 is hereby renumbered as section 17. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
18 on the same page 6, lines 4, 5, delete the phrase for retired and or injured professional boxers. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
19 on page 7, lines 3 to 12, section 18 is hereby amended to read as follows. Section 18, appropriations, the amount of 150 million pesos shall be appropriated for the initial implementation of this act, which shall be taken from the Philippine Amusement and Gaming Corporation, PAGCOR. Thereafter, the amount needed to implement this act shall be included in the General Appropriations Act and sourced from all income generated by the Commission from its operation and activities undertaken pursuant to its mandate, including but not limited to licensing, registration, accreditation fees, fines, and other charges. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Number 20, on the same page 7, lines 13 to 25, section 19 is hereby amended to read as follows. Section 19, Boxers and Combatants Welfare Development Trust Fund. There shall be an independent and separate trust fund established under this act to be administered by the Commission and exclusively used for the welfare benefits of professional boxers and combatants. The Commission shall be authorized to receive grants, donations, endowment from various sources, domestic or foreign, for purposes related to their functions, which shall accrue to the said funds, provided that in cases of donations from foreign governments, acceptance thereof shall be subject to the prior clearance and approval of the President of the Philippines upon recommendation of the Secretary of Foreign Affairs. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
I have no other amendments, Mr. President.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, we move to close the period of amendments, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, oh, my apologies, I withdraw that motion, Mr. President. The good minority floor leader would just like to seek a clean copy before we close the period of amendments with the permission of the sponsor and the permission of the body.
Yes, noted.
So we'd like to suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 1306,
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
and we'd like to request the Secretariat to prepare a clean copy for the good minority floor leader.
The Secretariat is instructed, minority leader is recognized.
It is our understanding, Mr. President, that the period of amendments will still be available in the next opportunity that this bill will be called on the floor.
That is correct.
We withdrew the motion, yeah. We withdrew the motion, Mr. President, to close the period of amendments. Mr. President, we have with us 5 bicameral conference committee reports on the disagreeing votes on the 2 houses on amendments on certain franchise bills. We'd like to recognize, Mr. President, our, let me read this one by one, Mr. President. We're in receipt of Senate Bill number, the disagreeing votes on 2 houses amendments of Senate Bill number, or House Bill rather, number 4136. And with the permission of the body, may we recognize the Senate panel chair, Senator Grace Poe, to give the highlights of the bicameral reports.
Senator Poe is recognized.
Mr. President, it is my privilege to report to this body the bicameral conference committee report on House Bill 4136. This is the franchise of the Manila Broadcasting Committee. It is my pleasure to announce that the House concurred in and adopted the Senate amendments in their entirety. Exactly. In particular, our colleagues in the lower house adopted our novel provision mandating the grantees to create decent and productive employment opportunities, as well as apprenticeship programs or on-the-job trainings for students and young Filipinos. I am proud of this amendment as it will ensure that franchises will exercise their duty to provide quality employment to all Filipinos. Magkakaroon ng trabaho at maraming trabaho para sa ating mga mamamayan. With that said, Mr. President, I move that we approve and ratify the Bicameral Conference Committee report on House Bill number 4136. Let the text of the joint explanation be inserted into the records of the Chamber.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
So, Mr. President, we move to approve and ratify bicameral conference committee report on the disagreeing votes on House Bill number 4136.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, we are also in receipt of the disagreeing vote, the conference committee report, disagreeing votes on the amendments of Senate Bill number 5349. With the permission, House Bill rather, 5349. With the permission of the body, may we recognize the chairman of this said panel, Senator Grace Poe.
Mr. President, again, it is my privilege to report to this body the Bicameral Conference Committee report on House Bill number 5349. This is the franchise of the Notre Dame Broadcasting Corporation. Again, the House concurred in and adopted the Senate amendments in their entirety. In particular, our colleagues in the lower house adopted our provision mandating the grantees to create decent and productive employment opportunities. I am proud again of this amendment because it will give our kababayans more jobs, maraming trabaho po para sa ating mamamayan, particularly kung nasaan po ang franchise office nito. With that, Mr. President, I move that we approve and ratify the Bicameral Conference Committee report on House Bill number 5349. Let the text of the joint explanation be inserted into the records of the Chamber.
Yes, Mr. President, we concur. We move, with the permission of the body, move to approve and ratify the Bicameral Conference Committee report on the disagreeing votes on House Bill number 5349. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, we are in receipt also of the Bicameral Conference Committee report on the disagreeing votes on 2 houses on the amendments of Senate Bill number 5635. May we recognize the chairperson, Senator Grace Poe, to give the highlights of the report.
Mr. President, it is my privilege to report also this body, the Bicameral Conference Committee report on House Bill 5635. This is the franchise of the of Bright Star Broadcasting. It is my pleasure to announce that the House concurred in and adopted the Senate amendments in their entirety. With that said, Mr. President, I move that we approve and ratify the Bicameral Conference Committee report on House Bill number 5635. Let the text of the joint explanation be inserted into the records of the Chamber.
Yes, Mr. President, we move to approve and ratify the Bicameral Conference Committee report on the disagreeing votes on House Bill number 5635. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, we are in receipt as well as we're of a Bicameral Conference Committee report on the disagreeing votes on the two houses on the amendments of House Bill number 5716. We move to recognize the chairperson of the panel, Senator Grace Poe.
It is my privilege to report the Bicameral Conference Committee on House Bill number 5716. This is a franchise of the Vanguard Radio Network. It is again my pleasure to announce that the House concurred in and adopted the Senate amendments in their entirety. In particular, our colleagues in the lower house adopted our provision mandating the grantees to create decent and productive employment opportunities, as well as apprenticeship programs or on-the-job training for students and young Filipinos that are actually paid internship programs. We should be proud of this amendment, as it will ensure that franchises will exercise their duty to provide quality employment to all Filipinos. With that said, Mr. President, I move that we approve and ratify the Bicameral Conference Committee report on House Bill number 5716. Let the text of the joint explanation be inserted into the records of the Chamber.
Mr. President, I move that we approve and ratify the Bicameral Conference Committee report on the disagreeing votes on the amendments to House Bill 5716. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, we are also in receipt of the Bicameral Conference Committee on the disagreeing votes of the two houses on House Bill number 6314. I move to recognize the chairman of the Senate panel, Senator Grace Poe.
Mr. President, it is my privilege to report to this body the Bicameral Conference Committee on House Bill number 6314. This is the franchise of StreamTech Systems Technology. As this is the last for the Bicameral Conference Committee report for today, I would like to stress to our colleagues that I think we did very well here in the sense that we have a novel provision mandating the grantees to create decent employment opportunities. Because a franchise is actually a privilege, we want to make sure that they return this privilege also, or they return the favor to their countrymen by providing jobs that will actually benefit those that are from the area where the franchise will be exercised or will be conducting its business. I am proud of this amendment, as it will ensure that franchises will exercise their duty to provide quality employment to all Filipinos. And they will also give mentorship programs as well as internship programs that are paid, Mr. President. Magkakaroon po ng trabaho ang ating mga kababayan dahil po sa mga franchise na ito. With that said, Mr. President, I move that we approve and ratify the Bicameral Conference Committee report on House Bill number 6314, and let the text of the joint explanation be inserted into the records of the Chamber. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, I move that we approve and ratify the Bicameral Conference Committee report on House Bill number 6314. I so move.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Congratulations to the distinguished lady senator. And, Mr. President, we'd like to resume consideration on Senate Bill number 1753 under Committee Report number 300, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
This is the act rationalizing and expanding the powers and duties of the Social Security Commission. So, Mr. President, we'd like the status is we're in the period of interpellation. We'd like to recognize the distinguished chairperson to sponsor and the distinguished minority floor leader to interpellate.
The session is suspended for a minute.
He's not there. He's not there.
Okay. Ano muna? Sige muna.
Ready?
Thank you.
Session is resumed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Before we recognize the sponsor and the Minority Floor Leader to interpolate, I forgot to mention earlier when we were approving the committee report, Mr. President, on the resolution rather on the single driver lanes or the single driver ban in EDSA, that 2 years ago, I clearly recall I delivered a privileged speech on the creation of elevated walkways all throughout EDSA, where we could have inclusive mobility. And we can do bike lanes, and we can do, because you can put up a bike lane there. Makati to the Senate, for example, will not be a very long bike ride if we do put up these facilities. Just food for thought, Mr. President, because earlier the good Minority Floor Leader and Senator Gordon had mentioned that really a lack of direction on where to go in the traffic situation in EDSA. They should come up with more novel ideas to control the problem of traffic. So I hope that in the next budget hearing, we can reiterate all these other ideas, Mr. President, to ease the traffic on EDSA. With that, Mr. President, yes, Senator Risa Ontiveros would like to be recognized, Mr. President.
Senator Risa.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I'm glad to, for a second time, support the idea and the sentiment expressed by the good Majority Leader. I do remember that speech that he delivered, and I supported it at that time with the video presentation about the possible layout and look of those elevated walkways. And actually, Mr. President, it links in a very good way to the sponsorship of the Minority Leader earlier about the resolution on the sense of the Senate. It's just too bad that our colleague, Senator Lauren, is no longer on the floor, but earlier we were having a discussion on the side that actually the high occupancy vehicle scheme, if it were not a standalone program, and if it had been consulted before being implemented, should properly be part of a whole package of traffic solutions. And part of that package, I believe, is also what the good Majority Leader has reiterated now, incorporating elevated walkways and bikeways as a feature of livable cities. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, thank you to the distinguished lady senator for the support. And we all are in favor of inclusive mobility, definitely. Mr. President, with that, we resume consideration of the Senate Bill number 1753 and ask that we recognize the good sponsor, Senator Richard Gordon, and to interpolate our good Minority Floor Leader, Senator Frank Dulon.
Senator Gordon is recognized to continue to sponsor the measure, and the Minority Leader is also recognized to ask questions. Thank you, Mr. President. Will the good sponsor of the measure yield for the last time on the last few questions that we want to raise on the composition of the Social Security Commission in the desire to strengthen the capabilities of the Commission?
Willingly, Your Honor. And I hope not for the last time in our lifetime in the Senate.
Yes, Mr. President, presently, for the record, the Social Security Commission is composed of how many members? Is it 9, Mr. President?
1 plus 7, Your Honor. 9, actually, 9.
There are 9. All right. Without passing judgment on the previous chairs of the Social Security Commission, and I emphasize, I repeat, without passing judgment, it appears to this representation that there are no standards followed, that pardon the language, and this is not to attribute any incompetence on the previous chairs, that it is more of a political reward than anything else, Mr. President. In the absence of any qualification standard on the chairman of the Social Security Commission, would the sponsor concur with that observation?
I do wholeheartedly, Your Honor, and this is of some concern. I know to the Minority Floor Leader as well as this representation that we need the best and the brightest that are qualified to handle this.
Mr. President, the Social Security contributions is in effect a salary tax, as the present presiding officer, who was the former Director General of the NEDA, would confirm. This is an imposition in effect, a salary tax because you have no choice if you are an employer and an covered employee that you have to pay social security premiums. Would you agree with that, Mr. Sponsor?
Yes, Your Honor, definitely.
And given that, Mr. President, given the fact, that we have almost 500 billion in investable funds, we have several million members of the Social Security depending on the actuarial viability of the Social Security Fund. Would the sponsor consider favorably in the period of amendments the designation of the Secretary of Finance as ex officio chair of the Social Security Commission so that it is appropriate, the fund is properly headed by one who is in charge of the finances of the whole government?
Certainly, Your Honor. In fact, I believe we discussed this earlier, and yes, Your Honor, definitely the Secretary of Finance should be chairman, must be chairman of this very important activity of the government for our people, our working people.
The Secretary of Finance shall be the ex officio chair.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Now, the Secretary of Labor is presently an ex officio member of the Commission, and we have no problems with continuing the Secretary of Labor as an ex officio member. Now, again, insofar as the SSS President is concerned, for the record, we find the present President of the Social Security system as qualified, competent for the job, coming from the insurance industry. However, we are not just legislating for the present, but certainly for the future. In that regard, would the Honorable Sponsor agree to an amendment at the appropriate time that the SSS President and the appointive members of the Commission, meaning the commissioners, should be of unquestionable integrity, good moral character, and with recognized competence in economics, banking and finance, law, management, or insurance. In other words, these are the minimum standards that the President and the regular appointive members of the Commission must have. If at the appropriate time, if we can introduce that amendment, if acceptable to the sponsor.
Your Honor, so as proposed, it is already done. We have already, because of our previous discussion, and we thank the good Minority Floor Leader for such suggestions, and that is why we're prepared to do that already.
Thank you, Mr. President. Now, Mr. President, would the good sponsor agree that in order to provide stability to the management of the Commission, the SSS President should have a definite term of office rather than being subjected to the trust and simply on the confidence of the appointing power. This is a very critical post. There's over 480 billion in investable funds. The millions of members depend on the fund for their future retirement and other benefits. It is but proper that this SSS President should enjoy security of tenure.
I wholeheartedly agree, Your Honor, except that I would need your guidance and support here because, as we all know, you authored a great piece of legislation on the GCCs, GCC law, but it says there that every chairman shall be, or member of the board shall have only 1 year.
Yes.
Subject to renewal.
We are aware of that. We can make an exception and
Yes.
we can say the provisions of this law to the contrary notwithstanding, we can make the exception insofar as the SSS president is concerned, because this is not the Social Security system and this Social Security Commission, they are not of the same category as an ordinary OGCC, given the assets that they hold and the importance of the function that they perform. We can provide, in our view, Mr. President, a better stability for the system if the Chief Executive Officer would have a definite term.
This representation wholeheartedly agrees, Your Honor, not only for the reasons that were stated, but because it will provide independence.
Yes.
Independent judgment, and for a man of probity and integrity, he will need that defense mechanism of having a set term, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I fully concur with that observation. Would the good sponsor have any idea at this point how long the term should be?
Your Honor, I'm a man who believes in continuity. I've always believed that a 6-year term will assure continuity, but I'm willing to settle for a 4-year term.
Or we can discuss this later off the floor, but 6 years or maybe 3 years subject to one reappointment. We can discuss this informally with the sponsor, and once we get consensus, we can just introduce it as an amendment.
Yes, Your Honor, of course I would be able to discuss that. Just some thoughts, Your Honor. I've always believed that countries with, although of course it's undemocratic in our terms, I've always thought that, you know, America would never gotten out of the slump if it were not for a long term given to President Roosevelt, especially during those war years. So it provided a sense of stability and continuity. But that is for a good president. So it's important that we check that, because we also had another example here that there was a long term with good results and later on disastrous results. Yes. So it is important, Your Honor, that we really discuss it and find a way and see our way clear in making sure that there is an ideal term that could be subject to extension, for example, by the Senate, Your Honor.
Yes, so, Mr. President, I take it to mean that the good sponsor would have basically no objection to having a set term for the President. We will just discuss what it should be. Various terms are proposed, but we can discuss it with the technical staff of the Social Security Commission and see what is the best term that we can propose for the President of the system.
Yes, Your Honor. Just an added comment. I'm a product of a 6-year term as mayor, Your Honor. And I felt really free to govern with political will.
Yes.
Of course, I'm subject to charges against for violations of law all the time, but it gave me the sense of independence and firmness and fairness in my attitude towards leadership. And that is why I would favor a long.
Yes, we are open to that, Mr. President. We are not rejecting it. We're just saying 6 years does not appear to be unreasonable. There is basis for the 6 years. There could also be basis for 3 years and 3 years. So, as I said, just the basic concept that we agree that the President of the Social Security Commission, or S of the system, SSS, should have a definite term is something that we agree and that we just discuss what it should be.
Thank you, Your Honor. I was merely stating an observation that, of course, as discussed, we're going to discuss this informally so we can get the best terms possible.
Yeah, of course, we should provide in the law, if since we are agreeing on a definite term, the grounds upon which the President may be removed for cause.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Now, Mr. President, insofar as the regular appointive members of the Commission, right now there are 6 members. Is that a correct statement?
Yes, Your Honor. 3 from the employers and 3 from the employees.
No, sir. It's 3 from the workers group, 2 from the employers and 1 from the
I'm sorry,
public
Your Honor, I
sector.
was looking at our proposed
Yes.
amendments. Yes, Your Honor, you're correct. The gentleman is correct.
So that from what you have read, I would assume that the good sponsor is agreeable to 3 from the workers sector and 3 from the employer sector.
3, Your Honor, plus. yes,
Right. But those 3,
Plus 1 yung Secretary of Labor. Plus 1 from the general public, Your Honor.
Mr. President, I don't know what that general public is. That's why I'm saying 6. We remove the general public and have the...
That is not a drop-dead proposal
Yeah.
from them, Your Honor.
We just have 3 from the labor, 3 from the employer sector, the other 3 in effect from the government because of the chairman, the Secretary of Labor, and the SSS president. They are all from the public sector.
And the Dole Secretary, Your Honor. Dole Secretary.
That's why I said the Secretary of Labor, Secretary of Finance, and the SSS president
Yes,
are
sir.
all members of the commission.
That's right.
So there
will
are
be 9.
total of 9.
Yes,
If
sir.
that's acceptable,
Oh, definitely, Your Honor.
good. Then,
Those are my thoughts exactly.
but also these nominees must also possess qualifications of competence in economics, in banking, in finance, in management.
And proven integrity. And,
Yes, of proven integrity.
Yes, Your Honor.
Because right now, again, without passing judgment on the present membership, sometimes I get, when I was there, I got the impression that, you know, there is not much substantive discussion on actuarial soundness, on, you know, on the actuarial soundness of the fund, on how to protect the fund, because the expertise of
not
those
there.
who sat were not tugma, as they would say, they were not fit for the for that kind of a position.
I certainly wholeheartedly share the observation, Your Honor, and definitely we should provide the qualifications that they should also be skilled in the banking, insurance, or similar businesses, Your Honor. And I have the proposal here as well.
Yeah, all right. The SSS president is the chief executive officer of the Social Security system,
That is correct, Your Honor.
and he shall be accountable to the Social Security Commission
Yes, Your
as the
Honor.
equivalent of the board of directors. The present term of the regular appointed members of the commission is 3 years, and we can maintain that, Mr. President?
1 year, Your Honor.
No, well, under the, yes.
Originally, it was 3 years.
We can bring it back to 3 years, because again,
That would be perfect, Your Honor.
yes, it can provide stability
Yes, Your Honor.
for as long as, you know, because I am comfortable with a longer period, so long as the qualifications are set.
The checks
Not
and
just-
balances are there, of course,
Yes.
yeah. And
So
besides,
that-
it's going to be very hard to get somebody just for 1 year, Your Honor.
Yes, yes. And because it is critical, given the magnitude of the funds and the responsibility that they carry for the millions of members, that they possess a certain qualification, rather than simply being a nominee of the workers' organization or a nominee of the employees' organization. They will continue to be nominees, but as nominees, they must have the qualifications.
That is correct, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. We can make that amendment.
In fact, Your Honor, I'm looking at the situation where when we finish this bill and it becomes a law, we're not just giving them a long-term period of stability, but we're going to assure them that it will be done by qualified men of integrity who know what they're doing, Your Honor.
That's correct, Mr. President. And one
women, Your Honor.
Sorry.
I don't want to offend our dear friend, Senator Risa Ontiveros.
Now, the present system requires that at least one from the worker sector, one from the employer sector shall be a woman, and we will maintain that, Mr. President.
Whatever pleases the, of course, Your Honor. I don't want to be glared at, Your Honor, and I think we will maintain that. Because once given, it is hard to take back, especially from a woman, Your Honor.
Okay. One final point. I had proposed this in the course of our interpretation earlier, but just for reconfirmation, the principal sponsor would have no objection and would endorse the idea of having an office of an actuary, not just an actuary.
That is already approved, Your Honor. That has already been discussed and the amendment has been prepared.
With that, Mr. President, we no longer have any question, and let me thank the good sponsor for a very substantial discussion on this bill, and we raised these questions in the hope that we can provide a better system than where it is today.
On the contrary, Your Honor, I should thank the Minority Floor Leader for schooling this representation and the SSS because of his vision, his expertise, and experience. I think we're coming out with a good law, Your Honor. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, in the absence of the majority leader, can we ask for a 1-minute suspension?
Session
And I
suspended.
emphasize the absence.
Okay. Order mo na.
Get louder. Oh. Yes, yes. There should be no reason why you should not be up for a minute.
Sir, a good example even is for an entry position for a lawyer. How now it's 68,000 per month. The SSS, the lowest is 28,000. The next is 48 and the other is 68.
54% of positions sa legal department.
Julie filled that right now because when we published it, there are no applicants.
So they
That's our under.
pareho dapat because they're competing with each other. So dapat pare-pareho sila. Session is resumed.
Mr. President, were we able to suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 1753?
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Which is a question, but yes, I make that into a motion. Therefore, we move to resume consideration, Mr. President, of Senate Bill number 17. I'm sorry. I move to transfer from the kind of ordinary business to special orders. Senate Bill number 1789.
Is there
I
any
so move,
objection?
Mr.
There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, would like to ask the Secretary to read the title of the measure.
Please proceed.
Senate Bill number 1789, an act to enhance the use of national wealth for local development by amending certain provisions in Book 2 of Republic Act 7160, otherwise known as the Local Government Code of 1991.
Mr. President, I move that we consider Senate Bill number 1789. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move to recognize the Honorable Sunny Angara to sponsor the measure.
Senator Angara is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President, Majority Leader, distinguished colleagues. Mr. President, nearly 3 decades have passed since the Local Government Code was enacted in 1991. Your Committee on Local Government has convened a review committee composed of the DILG, the Asian Development Bank, or ADB, the different leagues of LGUs, local government units, the academe and other stakeholders to review and propose reforms to the Local Government Code. As a product of that review, this representation has filed several measures proposing solutions to the various issues that were identified, some of which, or many of which, were authored by our present presiding officer, Senator Recto. We now stand to sponsor a measure which is a product of that review, which proposes by a way of enhancing the use of the national wealth tax for the developmental purposes of our local government units. Mr. President, we aim to amend a proviso in Section 294 of the Local Government Code, which states that at least 80% of the proceeds derived from the development and utilization of hydrothermal, geothermal, and other sources of energy shall be applied solely to lower the cost of electricity in the local government unit where such a source of energy is located. Mr. President, we want to lift this limitation on local government units so that that local government unit, through its council or sanggunian, has full control over how they will spend their share from the national wealth. By enacting this measure, we effectively remove this restriction to their fiscal autonomy. Ayon po sa DILG, sa kasalukuyan, merong 26 na LGUs ang naapektuhan ng limitasyon na ito. Kabilang na po rito ang mga munisipalidad ng Santo Tomas, Pantabangan, Alfonso Lista, lungsod ng Ormoc, Digos, Kidapawan, at mga lalawigan ng Nueva Vizcaya, Nueva Ecija, at Leyte. Isang magandang halimbawa ng epekto ng limitasyon ng Local Government Code ay ang sitwasyon sa Cananga, Leyte. Cananga is the host municipality of the 700 megawatt Leyte Geothermal Production Field, or LGPF, with 5 geothermal power plants and 4 optimization power plants. In 2013, around 106 million pesos represents the 80% share of Cananga. However, due to the limitation under the Local Government Code, this amount was exclusively used to lower the cost of electricity through government programs such as Direct Energy Cost Subsidy Programs and the Energy First Cost Subsidy Program. As a result, as of 2015, the refund in the electric bill of the residents of Cananga already amounted to 3 pesos per kilowatt. Despite the electricity coming from the geothermal energy industry and the sheer volume of surface waters in Cananga, 30% of the population still uses water taps in kitchen sinks. Hence, Cananga remains to be classified as a waterless municipality. Mr. President, kung maamendahan po ang batas, maaari nang gamitin ng Cananga Leyte ang kita mula sa geothermal power plants nito upang makalikha ng infrastruktura para masuplayan ng tubig ang buong munisipalidad. Another example is Alegria, the municipality of Alegria in Cebu Province. Makikinabang din po sa panukalang ito ang munisipyo ng Alegria, na kamakailan lamang ay nagbukas ng bagong oil at natural gas field sa kanilang barangay Montpelier. Tinataya na halos 3.35 million na bariles ng oil o langis at 6.6 billion cubic feet ng natural gas ang maliliko mula ngayon hanggang sa 2037. Sabi ni Department of Energy Secretary Al Cusi, kayang magpatakbo ng 60 megawatt gas plant ang Alegria oil field. Ayon sa munisipyo ng staff ni Mayor Verna Magalyon, palagay ng Department of Energy na halos 80 million pesos kada taon mula sa national wealth ang makukuha na share ng munisipyo ng Alegria dahil sa oil field na ito. Ito ay halos 90% ng budget, ng buong budget ng munisipyo ngayon na may halagang 90 million. 50 million mula sa local sources at 75 million naman mula sa IRA or Internal Revenue Allotment. With enhanced local government fiscal autonomy as envisioned by this amendment, the municipality of Alegria could literally double its developmental efforts. Sabi ni Mayor Magalyon sa isang pahayagan sa Visayas na plano nilang gamitin ang karagdagang pondo para magkaroon ng malinis na tubig ang bawat residente ng Alegria, makapaghain ng sapat na healthcare services at libreng gamot, mabigyan ng cash assistance ang mga senior citizens at PWDs or persons with disabilities at mag-implementa ng mga proyekto para sa organic farming. In conclusion, Mr. President, posibleng makahanap pa ng ibang Alegria oil fields sa iba pang parte ng bansa. Marami pang local government unit ang posibleng makinabang at umasenso sa national wealth. At kung hindi natin ipasa at isabatas ang panukalang ito, posibleng marami ring local government unit ang mahahadlangan. Sana wag na po tayong magpatali sa isang napaglumaan na batas. So I move that I recommend that we approve this measure after sufficient debate. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Angara. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, to allow our colleagues to study the measure further, we move to suspend consideration.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, with that, we move to adjourn session until 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Tuesday, August 28th. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Thank you, sir. Have a pleasant vacation, everyone.
28 tayo, di ba?